We're holding now just days after a full season of Yom Tovim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, Dina de Hashas, and it's a Takonas Hanavim of Krias HaTorah on Yom Tiv to read the Kriya Minyana de Yoima. Sukkot, we read about the mitzvah of taking the dal of of sitting in the sukkah. Rosh Hashanah, about shofar. A kriya minyana de Yoima. When the Torah speaks about the mitzvahs hamoyados, then there was a later takana, a takanas hagoinim. Tosfos brings it a takanas hagoinim to add on, to take out a second sefer Torah and to read not only about the Yom Tovim, but to read about the karbonos of the Yom Tovim. It's two different places. Parshas Emor speaks about the Yom Tovim, and then in Parshas Pinchas is about the karbonos of the Yom Tovim. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, two Sifrei Torah. One is the Kriya Metakanas Dina da Hashas, that's already from the Nevi'im, to read Krias HaTorah of Yom Tiv. And then there's another Kriya of Karbonos. Zok Tosfos, what's the reason for this second Kriya from the Go'odim actually later than the Gemara, not brought in the Gemara to take out a second Sefer Torah on Yom Tiv? Zok Tosfos, Uktsas yesh smach ledavar. Zok Tosfos, possible, the reason is Al Pi Gemara later. The Gemara Megillah, this is a Tosfos of Lamed Amud Beis, the Gemara a blot later brings what the Rabbeinu Shalom told Avram Avinu, that if Klal Yisrael is Chayter Rachmana Litzlan, there are karbonos, there are mechaper, because Avram Avinu said, B'ma'eda, how do I know that if Klal Yisrael is going to be Chayter, that you're not going to do again, Kamoi Doir HaMabel, this week's Pasha, Doir HaFloga, Chas v'shalom Yisrael chaytim lefanecha v'ata oisek kadoir hamabel kadoir haflaga. So the Eibusha said, you bring karbonos and I'm a chaper. Zok the Gemara, but Avram Avinu said, good, that's taka b'zman shebeis hamikdash kayim, that these karbonos. And but what's about when there's no karbonos, b'zman she'ein beis hamikdash kayim, what's then? So the Gemara says, Amar Loi, Kaviyach, the Eibusha told Avram Avinu, Kvarta Kantilem Seder Karbonos. As Masakin Seder Karbonos calls man Shekoyrim Ben. If you read about the Karbonos, Maila Allah Mailani Aleim Ki'ilu Makrivan. This is a famous Gemara that when you read about the Karbonos, it's like you bring a carbon, and Memela says the Eibusha, it's like you brought a carbon, Vani Moichel. Memela Zok Tosfos, that's pshat in the Takonas HaGo'inim to have a second Kriya, a second Sefer Torah on Yom Tiv, the Kriyas HaKarbonos, the Karbonos are Karbonos Chatois, Karbonos that are Machaper. So we read on Yom Tiv the Karbonos that was in the Beis HaMikdash, B'zman sheBeis HaMikdash Kaim, those Karbonos are Machaper. We read those Karbonos L'Kapara. Good. Atkan Tosfos Taf Lamed Amud Beis, and this is really a hezber Negeya to, on the past, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres. Good. Maybe we could have spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. But with this introduction that we read on Yom Tiv, Karbonos, because Maila, Ki'ilu Hikrif Carbon, Frek Tosfos, Daf Chav Gimel and Megillah, Oy Bazoi, why don't we read every single Shabbos? We should take out a second Sefer Torah and read Uv'yoyim HaShabbos. You should read Uv'yoyim HaShabbos, the karbonos of Shabbos. Psukim that are right before Rosh Hashanah and before the karbonos of Rosh Chodesh. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, Shabbos Kodesh, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, we're going to read Uv'yoyim HaShabbos. But Frek Tosfos, why don't we take out every single Shabbos a second Sefer Torah and read Uv'yoyim HaShabbos to have this mile of Ki'ilu Hikrif Carbon to have a kapara? As a Frek Tosfos. So these are few terutzim in the Rishonim. I will try to go through one by one clearly, and we'll see these are nafkamina ladina. Tosfos is first teretz. Tosfos says, really, you're right. Really, we should take a read of Yom HaShabbos every single Shabbos. But there's a technical problem. Uv Yom HaShabbos, the psukim that speak about the karbonos that we bring on Shabbos is only 2 psukim. It's only 2 psukim. To get an aliyah, to be koira b'toira, the minimum psukim is 3 psukim. So b'meila, what was the kasha? You should take out a second Sefer Torah and only read 2 psukim. You should read a b'yom HaShabbos, the kriya of the karbonos of Shabbos. That's not an eitzah because these only 2 psukim. B'yom HaShabbos is only 2 psukim. So b'meila, as Tosfos, I technically would say you should take out a second Sefer Torah to read those 2 psukim, but it's not an eitzah because lamaisa it's only 2 psukim. Okay, it's only 2 psukim, so add on a little bit. Add on from before, start a little earlier, go a little later. Zok Tosfos, you can't do that because it's shaloi mi'inyana. You can't just, we'll get to that in a minute, we'll get to that, very good. We'll get to Shiur in a minute, but first what Tosfos says, you can't add on more. That's an adding on would be a geshmak eitzah, add on more psukim from before the carbon Shabbos or afterwards. So Tosfos, that's not an eitzah because it's shaloi mi'inyana. Atkan divri Tosfos is first teretz. Frektis vasemes. Wait a second. Today, if you davened already, or if you're going to daven, the Krias HaTorah of today of Rosh Chodesh, Havada we read of Rosh Chachechem, but we also read the 2 psukim before of Yom HaShabbos. How does that come in? Of Yom HaShabbos, that's not Me'inyana. We need to add more psukim for today's Krias HaTorah, so we add on, besides of Rosh Chachechem, we start way before. But 2 of the psukim is the B'yom HaShabbos. That's shaloi mi'inyana. How does anyone ever thought about it? How does B'yom HaShabbos come in today? And you know what you should do? You should skip it. You start earlier carbon atomit, skip B'yom HaShabbos, and then go Rosh Chachechem. We do skip sometimes. Every kriya of a tainus, you skip. So why don't we skip over Yom HaShabbos? So for this kasha, clear the kasha? Tosfos says you can't add on psukim on every single Shabbos onto the carbon HaShabbos because it's shaloi mi'inyana, and the kriya of today, Rosh Chodesh, we read of Yom HaShabbos. How do you add on Yom HaShabbos? It's shaloi mi'inyana. It's not Shabbos today. It's Erev Shabbos, but it's not Shabbos. So the Ran already bavarns this kasha, and the Ran says that since sometimes Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos, like this Rosh Chodesh tomorrow, Memela it's called Mi'inyana. It's called Mi'inyana because sometimes Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos, and then you taka, if it's Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos, it's taka b'yom HaShabbos. Memela, even a time when it's not, like today, or any time Rosh Chodesh falls out during the week, you still read the b'yom HaShabbos. It's called, it has a shayches. As is Dr. Ram. However, the Achroinim ask, very good, your shaila, that l'cha'ira enechanami taka, let's say when, to add on every single Shabbos after V'yom HaShabbos of Rosh Chachechem, that's shaloi mi'inyana. But if you turn back earlier,
I can't use the Ran for that. Sometimes there's Chodesh and Shabbos. So on Shabbos I can learn Chodesh.
Aha. Good. That's interessant. Also, that l'chayra you should be able to even read the Rosh Chachechem. Good. It's a shaila, but the shaila is even more, which once we'll answer the shaila of Tamid, we'll answer this also. But the shaila is, why can't every Shabbos add on to Tamid? Why we don't read Tamid every single day? That's a separate discussion. That's Inkan Mekaimai now, but we don't. But Al Kapanim every Shabbos, when we read of Yom HaShabbos, if you turn back earlier, right before Yom HaShabbos, is the Korban HaTamid. Why can't you read the Korban HaTamid? Why not? Why not the Korban HaTamid? You're asking that Rosh Chodesh also be the rank, because sometimes Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, but upon him, the Tamid. What's the biggest raya that Tamid is called Mein Yana? Today we're going to read the Korban Tamid. Is that tzachos? It has a shayches. So if it has a shayches for today for a Chodesh, and we need 3 aliyahs, we need 4 aliyahs, but if you need the aliyahs besides Rosh Chodesh, you go back to Korban HaTamid. Every Shabbos you should start the Korban HaTamid as well also. So for these 3 terutzim, again, we're still holding in the first teretz of the Rishonim. Why don't we read every single Shabbos? Uveyoyim HaShabbos. The first teretz in the Rishonim is that it's only 2 psukim. But we have a shaila in this first teretz. Why don't we start earlier and read also the Korban HaTamid? And it will be more than 2 psukim. On the first teretz of the Rishonim, we want to understand why can't you add more? And there'll be more than 2 psukim. You'll have the full kriya. The first teretz, the Sfas Emes answers, Rosh Chodesh. You know why Rosh Chodesh, so to speak, is better, that you could add on Korban HaTamid, Masha'en Kein Shabbos? Rosh Chodesh, the core aliyah has 3. Rosh Hashanah, it's kedei of an aliyah. Maybe you could add on Korban HaTamid, even though, let's call it, it's semi-Mein Yana. Masha'en Kein Shabbos, you need the aliyah itself to have a Shiur aliyah of 3 psukim. Shabbos doesn't have 3 psukim, it doesn't help to add on. You have to start somewhere. Rosh Chodesh, we start with 3 psukim. Besides, you can add on. Shabbos, we're not even starting with 3 psukim, but maybe you can add on. That's the first teretz. So that's why Shabbos, every Shabbos, we can add on Tamid, as opposed to Rosh Chodesh, we could add on the Krias HaTamid. The Taz says a teretz. It's hard to understand the teretz, but I'm gonna read the words of the Taz inside. Zok the Taz in Reish Pei Gimel. Venerally, the Shani Rosh Chodesh, that is a chiyuv to read 4 aliyahs. Memela behechrach, you have to add on more before. Okay, behechrach gimel koydem chayves hayom, you add on. Masha'en Kein Shabbos, that you only need 1 aliyah. Ela echad b'shvil chayves hayom, mashayches yesh li leparshas HaTamid. Rosh Chodesh, that you need 4 aliyahs, you add on. Shabbos, that you only need 1 aliyah. Shabbos, you only need 1 aliyah. What shayches do you have before? So how do you understand the Taz? If to accomplish 4 aliyahs, you could add on. So why can't you, to accomplish 1 aliyah, why can't you add on?
Why is it not like this Hashem?
So you're saying the pshat is like this Hashem, is that the core aliyah. So I hear what you're saying. You're saying could be the pshat is like this Hashem. It's a little interesting, the lashon that he says that if it's 4 aliyahs, masha'en, if it's 1 aliyah. He's saying 1 aliyah means that at least you have to start somewhere. I hear. The Prima Godim says a different hezber. The Prima Godim says that the reason, Zok the Prima Godim, the reason why the chiluk between Shabbos that you can add on and the Chodesh that you could add on, it's a little how to get it into the lashon, but he says v'nira kavanasi in the Taz, Rosh Chodesh, takonas hanaviyim to lane Rosh Chodesh. Mimela, we have to figure it out. These are takonas hanaviyim to lane. If it's not enough psukim, we'll add on psukim from before. Masha'en Kein Shabbos, it's a takonas hagoinim. Beseder. If there isn't enough psukim, you're not going to add on the kriya of earlier. In other words, a chiluk between a kriya of Rosh Chodesh that you add on and a kriya of Shabbos. We don't say B'yom HaShabbos on every Shabbos because there's only 2 psukim, we don't add on, because the whole reason to lane would only be, why would we lane on Shabbos, metakanas hagoinim, beseder, metakanas hagoinim, to make a doichik, to add on psukim that's not so minyan, we don't do it. That's the second teretz why we only read we don't need a b'yom Shabbos. There's only 2 psukim, and l'chor you should add on. The teretz is adding on. It's not a eitzah. And the third teretz, and then the third teretz is the levush. The levush says that if you're going to add on Shabbos 3 psukim. On Shabbos, how many psukim of Yom Shabbos? It's 2 psukim. It's not enough. So you really need 1 more pasuk. You need 1 more pasuk. You can't just add 1 more pasuk. Why? Because if you go back before, these are pay. So Memela, you have to read 3 psukim. Zok the levush, v'nimtza, the tafel is more than the ikar. The tafel is more than the ikar. Rosh Chodesh, we add on also more than the ikar. But al kapana by Rosh Chodesh, there's 1 aliyah. There's an aliyah that you could already lane because of the 1 aliyah. Maybe you can add on more. By Shabbos, to create an aliyah and to have the tafel more psukim than the ikar, that we don't do. So just to sum up what we have right now, and then to recap, we asked the Shaila, why don't we read every single Shabbos, Uvayom Shabbos, the Karbonis of Shabbos, just like we read now Yom Tov, all the Yom Tov, we took out a second Sefer Torah. Why don't we take out a second Sefer Torah and read Uvayom Shabbos every single Shabbos of the year? Teretz number 1, Zok Tosfos, it's only 2 psukim. It's only 2 psukim. 2 psukim, you can't read 2 psukim, it's too little. You add on, so that we spoke now for a few minutes why adding on is not a eitzah. The second teretz in Tosfos, why don't you read of a Yom Shabbos every single Shabbos of the year? Because it's going to cause us a problem, an issue legabe the HaTorah. You read the HaTorah b'may the solik minei. Yeah, if you have this Shabbos, it's the Parshas HaShavua and Rosh Chodesh. We read Hashemayim Kisi Rosh Chodesh. Whenever these 2 Shabbos Shkola, but my the Solik Minei, that's where we read the HaTorah. If every Shabbos you're going to take out a second Sefer Torah and you're going to read it b'Yom Shabbos, it's going to come out that HaTorah is always going to be about Shabbos, the same HaTorah every single week of the year. So what's the problem? The whole Takonos HaTorah, as we mentioned here in the past a couple of times, the Taisus Yom Tov brings it that it was a Takon in the times of the Chashmonoim, of the Yevonim, that didn't allow us Krias HaTorah. So we read a HaTorah that was minyan of the parsha. Every HaTorah is connected, has something to do with the parsha. So if we're going to read a b'yom Shabbos, and every Shabbos is going to be about Shabbos, not about the parsha, we're going to lose out on the HaTorah. We're not going to get the mile of the HaTorah. It's just like Tosfos.
Why can't you read a b'yom Shabbos first? We take a 3 separate Torah. There's something that's Shvi and then Mafir. So read it first.
Read a b'yom Shabbos first.
Should read it first. Tadir v'shein tadir. Every parsha is different. The weekly parsha.
It's a good shaila. You should read the b'yom Shabbos first. It's a great question. We have to be ma'ayin, but the simple answer l'chayru would be, the simple answer is that l'maisa, the Krias b'yom Shabbos, the Krias HaKarbonis, being that it's only Takonos HaGoinim, comes after. It's what to be ma'ayin more. I don't want to get off topic, but every Yom Tov, just now, Koheles, and then the Krias HaTorah. So the Shilas Krias HaTorah should be first, Tada v'sheira, Tada Koidim, but the teretz is that Krias HaMegillas is only a minig, but you see over there, you do it first. Maybe Krias HaTorah, 2 Krias HaTorah, you do have to do the Takonos, Dina Darshas first. Interesting ha'ara. Al Kapanim, that's the second teretz. The second teretz why we don't read of Yom HaShabbos every single Shabbos is because the HaTorah. The third teretz in Tosfos is that What did we say? Why we take out a second Sefer Torah and read the Karbonos? We began the Shiur and we said, Zaktoisis up here Gemara, that when you read the Karbonos, Maila ni aleichem, ki ilu you brought the Karbonos, and what? Not just that you brought the Karbonos, you have a kapara. Yom Tif the Karbonos are the kapara. Shabbos, the Karbonos are not the kapara. The carbon Shabbos, like the Torah says, Retzisa Karbonisera, Retzisa, it's Maratza. The Karbonis of Shabbos are Maratza, it's not the kapara. Zak the Torah, when he brings this teretz, Ubemusaf Shabbos ain't carbon lechaper. It's not a kapara, shekulon oilos. The zeo that we say Retzisa Karbonisera. What's Retzisa Karbonisera? Because Yom Tovim kulon chatos. Ubeshabbos it's oilus. So Mamela, what was the kasha that we should read every single Shabbos? Uvayoyim Shabbos, we should take out a second Sefer Torah. Why would you even think about it? The teretz is bedoima, like we just did Yom Tov now, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkah, Shmini Atzeres. There, you know why we read we took out a second Sefer Torah Takanas HaGoinim, is because to have the kapara, like the Gemara says, the Rabbi Shalom told Avram Avinu, Maila ni aleichem, you should have the kapara. Shabbos, the carbon is not like kapara.
That's why the Siddur doesn't, you don't see the Yerotzim by the Kabbanis. Because it's not
on Shabbos.
On Shabbos, because it's not kapara.
Aha. Good, you're saying right. The afterwards, right. But the evidence is if you say l'mashal chatas, you say the karbonos, be'etzem, those karbonos would be like kapara. Now, l'maisa you don't bring it because you don't bring those karbonos on Shabbos. Yeah, but I hear if we're speaking about the V'yoyim Shabbos, right? So over there, I think it's klar, there isn't. If you mind, I think there isn't a Yerotzim. But yeah, and the Chanami, it's not like kapara. What's taka the chiluk between Shabbos and Yom Tif? The karbonos of Yom Tif are the kapara, and karbonos of Shabbos are the kapara. Zokta Meshachachma. Interesting. Yom Tif is mutter b'malacha. Certain malachas, oichel nefesh, but it's mutter b'malacha. When it's mutter b'malacha, it's easy for a person to come lidei chet. Zok the Meshech Chachma. Masha ein kein Shabbos, that's why you bring the chatos. Masha ein kein Shabbos, that it's asa b'malacha. But maybe you don't bring the chatos. However, what yeah? Miu v'lachshoiv machshavos is mutter. Machshavos is mutter. So memeli you bring a carbon on Shabbos, which is like a oila, which is meratza on machshava, which is meratza machshava. Memela you bring a carbon that's meratza. But frekta el Yerabba, wait a second. Shabbos you bring a carbon. What carbon do you bring? A carbon that's meratza for machshava, it's also mechaper on asay. So you say, why don't we read it on Shabbos? To get this kapara, this ritzui. Klora Shaila. Tosfos' third teretz says you don't read the B'yayim Shabbos. Why not? Because we only read karbanas lekapara. No, but we should read the B'yayim Shabbos for the ritzui. It's mechaper. Oil is mechaper al asay. It's machaper machshavas. So we should read the V'yayim Shabbos every single Shabbos to have the kapara. Zok the El Yerabba like this. The carbon of Shabbos is not a kapara. It's meratza. What's the chiluk between kapara and ritzui? The Gemara in Zvachim calls it a ritzui. What's the difference? It's a doirin. Zok the Rashi over there and Dav Zayin in Zvachim. Marshal to somebody that was chayte to a melech. So of course, the first thing is he has to do tshuva. However he works it out with the melech, he fixes. Then, when he wants to go visit the melech, he comes with something. Because even though after he was mesaken the chait, you bring something when the next time he goes to the king, you bring something. This carbon l'ritzui is not like kapara. Kapara we had already. It's l'ritzui. When you come to the melech, you bring a ritzui. So that's why we don't read Uvayom HaShabbos every Shabbos. One last teretz, and then we'll see nafkamina ladina. The Das HaKenim says the following. The pasuk says, "Eila mayade Hashem asher tikru oisem mayadem." Eila mayade Hashem asher tikru. Zok the Das HaKenim ein mikro yoytzim medei pshutai. Avad it's only takanas hagaoinim. It's not a deraisa, but asher tikru means that on Yom Tiv you should read. Eila asher tikru oisem mayadem. You should read the karbonos hayoim. The pasuk says asher tikru the karbonos hayoim. Zok the Das HaKenim. The pasuk is speaking about moyados. Rosh Chodesh is a moyed. You read Taka Rosh Chodesh, the karbonos. Yom Tiv is a moyed. Shabbos is not a moyed. Shabbos is not a moyed. Memela, Shabbos is not a moyed. You don't read of Yom HaShabbos. To sum up, we have 4 terutzim in the Rishonim. Why we don't read every single Shabbos of the year of Yom HaShabbos. Teretz number 1, we said these 2 little psukim. Technically we would, but these 2 little psukim. Teretz number 2 is technically we would, but then we're going to lose the HaTorah. Teretz number 3 is it's no shaykhis because it's not a kapara. And teretz number 4 is asher tikru oisem mayadam. The Torah, so to speak, says only read it on Yom Tov, not on Shabbos. The nafkamina ladina would be Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, do you read Uvayom HaShabbos? Do you read Uvayom HaShabbos? Tomorrow, Shabbos Kodesh, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. We're going to take out a second Sefer Torah to read of Rosh Hashanah. We don't need to add a lot of psukim because we don't need more than 1 aliyah. Today we have to add for more aliyahs. Tomorrow we don't have to add 1 aliyah. Do you also read of Uvayom HaShabbos? Lefi the first 2 terutzim in the Rishonim, teretz number 1 is why you don't read it every Shabbos. Pashat, practically you can't because there's only 2 psukim. Avada, when you could, like tomorrow, that you're already anyways reading of Rosh Hashanah. Avada, you're going to read of Yom HaShabbos. The same is also with the HaTorah. What did we say? Be'etzem we would read of Yom HaShabbos. Now, first the HaTorah, we're going to lose the HaTorah. We're not losing the HaTorah. First of all, the HaTorah tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. And even if you would read of Yom Shabbos the HaTorah, you're not losing the HaTorah every week of the year. So if you the first 2 terutzim, you would read of Yom HaShabbos. If you the second 2 terutzim, what did we say? It's lekapara. Lekapara, Yom Tiv, the karbonos are lekapara. Shabbos, it's not lekapara. Shabbos, that the karbonos are not lekapara, but maybe even tomorrow, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, you're not going to say of Yom HaShabbos. And what the Das HaKenim says, that you don't read it because Eila me'ad Hashem asher tikru oisam b'moyadam asher tikru only on Yom Tiv. You wouldn't read it. So it depends on the terutzim if you would read of Yom HaShabbos. And it's a big shaila in the Rishonim, big machlokes Rishonim. The Rambam spells out clearly in Hilchos Tefillah, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, you only read of Rosh Hashanah. You don't read of Yom HaShabbos. However, Rabbeinu Menoyach already is made that the minig is yes to read of Yom HaShabbos. And as is gepasken in Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch is very interesting. And Shulchan Aruch says clearly read of Yom HaShabbos. If you look at the siman in Shulchan Aruch that has 1 sif, the heading of the Shulchan Aruch says the reason why we don't read of Yom HaShabbos every Shabbos in Hilchos Shabbos. See if I have it here. Reish Pei Gimel, Zok the Shulchan Aruch. I don't have a copy, but the Shulchan Aruch says the heading of the Shulchan Aruch is why don't we read 2 psukim v'yom HaShabbos? Why don't we read Zok the Shulchan Aruch? Because it's only 2 psukim. The Shulchan Aruch is not an explanation. The Shulchan Aruch is piskei dinim. So what does the Shulchan Aruch in the heading say? A time that we don't read a V'yayim HaShabbos every Shabbos. So the teretz is, and the Goyin already points out this Nakud in two places, Sign Hilchos Shabbos Reish Pei Gimel and Sign Hilchos Rosh Chodesh, that the only reason we don't read the V'yayim HaShabbos every single Shabbos is because it's two psukim. Memela, when it comes to Shabbos Rosh Chodesh that we're reading tomorrow of Rosh Hashanah, there is no problem to add on another two psukim. Avada, we're going to read the V'yayim HaShabbos. And that's Takal Halacha. If somebody missed the V'yayim HaShabbos, it's hard to say. You have to lane over. I don't know what you're going to do because it's only two psukim. Chaim Palaji says if somebody only read the Rosh Hashanah Shaper Dami. Before concluding, I also spoke a little bit about two Sifrei Torah Halachos. That could be a shiur for itself. Actually, in the night kollel, this man Aboleinu L'Toivu, we're going to learn Hilchos Sefer Torah, Hilchos Krias HaTorah. I'm saying so. This is these different halachos negay when you take out two Sefer Torah, but we'll leave that for a separate time. One nekuda. We said an afkamin is going to be tomorrow Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. Just this morning, the Eibishter put it into my head. The same thing maybe you could declare should l'choyra be Yom Kippur Shechal Yos b'Shabbos this year. We're reading already the Mafter U'Ba'asa L'Chodesh. Why don't you add on also V'yayim HaShabbos? It's very close by. You could be medalig, unless you're not medalig in one ali itself. I didn't have enough time to my eye, and I bring it up to the olam. It should come out. If the only, like we just said an after minute for tomorrow, if the only thing is heichet himtza that you don't have two psukim is too little, Yom Kippur Shechali is b'Shabbos, that you're already reading a mafter of the karbonis of Yom Kippur, you should add on. It's in the same parsha. It's in Pinchas. It's pretty close, right before. It's probably one daf back, one amid back. Also, just want to conclude with a medrash that Ramosha Wolfson quotes. I couldn't find it inside. I'm saying he brings this medrash. It's a moiridig medrash. We spoke a little bit about this when we learned about the mitzvah aliyah l'regel. The mitzvahs asay the rights of aliyah l'regel shalosh palm of Hashana, the shalosh regalim la'asad lavai. There's going to be in addition lo Shabbos hayom v'lo Chodesh hayom. To say there's going to be call it oil l'regel or aliyah al yidei anonim, but there's going to be aliyah l'regel to be oil l'regel to the Beis Hamikdash every Shabbos and every Rosh Chodesh. But he brings further the medrash aboyer de gezach that Shabbos Rosh Chodesh there's going to be twice aliyah l'regel, once mitzad Shabbos and once mitzad Yom Rosh Chodesh. He brings it. He has a whole shtickle. Which one's going to be first, Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh? Because he handles. He handles which one's going to be first, but upon him, the Medrash says, Boyer de Gezach, that a Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, we're going to be Zoicha la'aliyah l'regel, aliyah l'idei anonim, aliyah l'regel twice, which should be Zoicha for every Shabbos, every Rosh Chodesh, and Shabbos Rosh Chodesh to be oil l'regel twice, a good Chodesh and a good Shabbos.
Yom Kippur is separate aliyah, you're asking?